A series of alarming developments over the past 24 hours that all tie back to the fact that a former president with a history of violent rhetoric linked to a domestic violent extremist threat is currently facing serious federal and state criminal charges and could be on the verge of a fourth indictment. We're learning more about the man who was shot and killed by the FBI as they were serving an arrest warrant over threats he made to President Biden and others. The New York Times reports Craig D. Robertson, 75, was charged with threatening to shoot other elected officials, including Alvin Bragg, the Manhattan District Attorney, as well as making threats against law enforcement officials, according to court documents filed a day earlier in U.S. District Court in Salt Lake City. Mr. Robertson owned numerous firearms, including a sniper rifle. The complaint also laid out his history of threats on social media. Other subjects of Mr. Robertson's threats: Attorney General Merrick Garland, Governor Gavin Newsom of California, and Letitia James, the New York Attorney General. The incident comes at a time when Donald Trump is directly going after prosecutors who have either indicted him, like Jack Smith or Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg, or maybe on the verge of doing so, like Fulton County DA Fani Willis. NBC News reports Donald Trump is airing a television ad in Atlanta and other TV markets that attacks the Fulton County District Attorney, who could soon charge the former president with his fourth criminal indictment. The new ad, released by the campaign on Sunday, accuses Willis of previous wrongdoing. It also names attorneys who've already brought charges against Trump, including Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg and Special Counsel Jack Smith. Now, we're not going to show it to you. It is filled with conspiracies and falsehoods, and it comes at an exceptionally tense moment in this country. Fani Willis is addressing the ad, though. In a letter to her staff, she says it contains derogatory and false information. She urges her team to stay above the fray. The letter was obtained by NBC News. It reads in part, "We have no personal feelings against those we investigate or prosecute, and we should not express any. This is business. It will never be personal. We have a job to do. In this office, we prosecute based on the facts and the law. The law is nonpartisan. You should feel no need to defend me. I shared with this office at last Friday's meeting 1/1000th of the negative or derogatory comments I receive. I invited you into an hour of my typical day. I am not concerned with the calls, emails, or ads, and you should not concern yourself with them. Your instruction from me is to ignore all the noise and keep doing your job with excellence." Joining our conversation, former Assistant Director for Counterintelligence at the FBI, Frank Figliuzzi, also Charlie Sykes, Editor-at-Large for The Bulwark. And here at the table with me, former Acting Assistant Attorney General for National Security at the U.S. Department of Justice, Mary McCord. Mary, I want to start with you. Talk to us about what we watched out of Utah and the timing, the president landing in Salt Lake City.
Well, it's clear from the court documents that were filed and also from the reporting that this is a man who's been making threats for some time. It wasn't like a new, suddenly, the president's coming, I'm going to make a threat. He's been making threats for months and months now. But here he had opportunity because he lives in Provo. He's not far from Salt Lake City. And we have the president actually going there. So I think that really heightens the level of danger here, because a lot of times I think there's confusion about whether a threat made online is serious. You know, whether it's just somebody sort of talking big and using threatening language, but with no intent to carry it out. Well, now we see that there was an intent at least to try to carry it out. We see, because of the arrest and the cache of weapons that have been seized, that he had the means to carry it out. And certainly he was, you know, in a proximity. Now, I'm not going to suggest he would have ever been successful in actually getting close enough to the president to get off a shot. But, you know, he was preparing to make an effort to go do this. So, you know, when we talk about what we can take seriously as a threat and what is just talk, we don't always know. And here, you know, for good reason, the FBI had been tracking this, paying attention to this, and knew it was time to take action. But we don't always know that. And part of the problem with the rhetoric that you talked about in your opening is you can't watch everybody. You can't know what everyone's planning. And there will be individual actors who do seek to take action. This isn't the first time we've seen this. As you know, after the search at Mar-a-Lago, there was an attempted attack on the FBI in Cincinnati. So, and there's others like that. So that it's very hard for law enforcement to know which threats online are going to materialize into actual physical, you know, attempts.
Craig Figliuzzi, you have been in the room where those conversations happen, where those threats are assessed. Talk to us about how those decisions are made ordinarily and the complications of making those choices in this moment.
Yeah, the in this moment part is something worthy of lots of discussion. But let's address how these decisions are made. First of all, they're done in concert with the U.S. Attorney's Office, of course, who's going to have to prosecute a case if they agree to charge. In this case, there were three distinct federal charges that were applied here in the arrest warrant. And a big factor here is specificity as to target, time, method, and location of where the threat will be enacted. And we see this throughout his multiple threats, not only multiple threats against the same person, but multiple threats against various people. Really graphic specificity, really too much to go into here in this hour in terms of disturbing content. But it was all there and enough for a U.S. attorney and ultimately a judge would accept this easily as valid charging. And then you start looking at, well, we approached him early on in the spring. We asked him what's up with the threats. And he essentially blew the FBI off saying, hey, we're done, come back with a warrant. And immediately thereafter, the subject starts posting threats against the FBI agents. So, he's doubling down on the threats here. So now, with regard to this environment, yeah, look, a lot of hand-wringing here about, hey, if we do this, the guy's elderly, he's known in the community, the guy goes to church, this isn't going to go over well. How do we do it? Well, let's do it safely. Let's bring a SWAT team. It turns out to be a barricade situation, not surprising. And there's a back and forth. You can even see some of it in a video by a neighbor that's been released. Hey, get the hands up. But I'm told repeated commands were given and repeatedly refused. This guy refused to comply. I've heard some reports that a drone was sent in to scout out what's going on with this guy, and then some negotiation, all of it failing. Ultimately, I'm told, and we're going to hopefully hear more from the Salt Lake City FBI office this afternoon. Ultimately, there was a threat posed to an agent fired back at this guy because there was a weapon, I'm told, that was involved. So the bigger picture here, Alicia, moving forward is, look, this is not the last one we're going to see. Quite the opposite. This is stochastic terrorism. This is the idea that people can be incited to violence by a leadership figure who is painting another group or individual as less than human, dehumanizing them. They're evil, they're bad, and therefore it makes it much easier for people to carry out violent acts on behalf of someone else's ideology that they've adopted. And I'm telling you, you may recall after 9/11, we kind of made fun of the color-coded threat level we had for a while. Today's orange, it's yellow, it's red. If we had that in place, we would be changing the color and escalating the threat level as Trump continues to face charges and trial.
Charlie, I want to read to you a little bit from NBC News' reporting on Craig Robertson. Quote, Robertson's alleged threat to Bragg included calling him a political hack linked to George Soros and plotting to assassinate him in a parking garage, the charging document said. It's impossible not to draw the line from Trump's rhetoric to the people like this who appear to be radicalized.
Yeah, it's a dangerous situation. And in fact, it is escalating, especially since Donald Trump decided that he is going to be running ads. The level of his rhetoric seems to be intensifying against prosecutors, judges, perhaps even jurors here. And I think the people need to understand, that this may sound like, okay, it's Donald Trump again, it's the same old playbook, but he does seem to be ramping it up at exactly the moment when you would think that calmer heads would say, hey, we need to lower the temperature because this is dangerous. There's lots of guys like this. It's also worth remembering that Jack Smith did not indict Donald Trump for inciting the violence of January 6th, but he did in his indictment say that Donald Trump was exploiting it. Now, Donald Trump does both. He incites and exploits. But this is important to understand that in Donald Trump's mind, an atmosphere of fear, chaos, and violence actually works for him, he thinks. He looks at that and he goes, yeah, I can work with this. This will benefit me. Are afraid. I can deny that I am directly associated with these attacks, but he's pouring the kerosene on the fire on a daily basis. And again, it is ramping up, and it's going to get worse over the next year and a half. You would think that people in the legal community, in the political community, religious institutions would at this moment begin to say, we need to back off. This is a dangerous moment.
Yeah, speaking to that dangerous moment, Frank, the federal judge assigned to the Trump election case, Judge Tanya Chutkan, receiving security. NBC News saw her today escorted by 3 U.S. Marshals. Well-established pattern at this point. Anyone involved in trying to hold Trump accountable has to prepare. Their office, the people who care for them, have to prepare for the possibility of violence.
Indeed, it's a sad state of affairs to see a judge have to have what looks like now maybe a full-time security detail. NBC News reported that this was spotted even as she was inside her own courthouse grabbing coffee in the cafeteria. That's where we are today. And look, we have to extend the threat concern to, of course, witnesses who are already being targeted by Trump and his cohorts, namely Vice President Pence, who's likely to testify. Steve Bannon's been after him online, and so has Trump, calling him all kinds of names. And the prosecutors, of course, and the jury, of course, the many jurors, all of this in a high threat environment. They all can't be protected all the time. And I keep telling people law enforcement has to get it right every single day, and the bad guys only have to get it right once.
Right, Mary, let's talk about that letter from Fani Willis to her staff. Your reaction?
Well, I read the full letter before coming on, and, you know, it's over a page long, and she's really, I think, trying to steel her staff and the attorneys for the onslaught. She's been experiencing it for quite some time now, but not necessarily everyone on her team has been experiencing it. And certainly if a grand jury indictment is returned next week or in the coming weeks, there will be other prosecutors involved. There'll be others within her office involved. And I think she's really trying to steel them for what's to come and, you know, get them to commit to the resolve that it takes. Now, I will say, as a former prosecutor, prosecutors are used to being in situations where they are disliked by the defendants they are prosecuting. But typically, we really haven't had to worry that much. I say the we. I've been not a prosecutor for 6 years now, but it was a very long time that I was a prosecutor. I didn't worry that much about physical violence because prosecutors are fungible, right? If you harm one, there is another. Your case is not going to go away if you harm the prosecutor. Same with the judge. Different for witnesses, right? And so it's one reason why we've always been, as a prosecutors and as our system, judges and everyone, so careful to protect the security of witnesses because they are in unique positions. There's not necessarily other people can take their place. And I think, you know, what's interesting now is that I think because that notion that prosecutors are fungible doesn't seem to matter to people like Donald Trump and his ardent supporters who just want vengeance, it seems like. They just want some sort of retribution. And unfortunately, there are people out there who are willing to take action on that.
Well, one of the things that stood out to me about the letter is that, yes, there is the chilling effect and her asking her staff, do not worry, do not allow this to concern you, but also sort of the subtext of don't allow it. Don't it allow you to make an unforced error? Yeah. Right? Don't get caught up in all of this such that you look away momentarily from doing the job that you are assigned to do.
That's right. And she really puts it on her, too. Don't feel the need to defend me. Right. Because she knows she's getting most of the incoming. And I'm sure there are people who are very close to her in that office who are very offended by that incoming and want to say things about it. But you're right. Saying things is kind of slipping right into the trap that I think Donald Trump and others are trying to set. And so they just need to stay above that fray, as exactly the words I think she said, and do their jobs. But they also need to have security. They need to be protected. And there's a whole growing circle of people who need security.